Module 9, the peripheral nervous system. Divisions of the autonomic nervous system. Well, let's begin our discussion of the autonomic nervous system. It can be divided up into the sympathetic division and the parasympathetic division. The sympathetic division is for preparing your body for physical movements by increasing heart rate and raising your blood pressure. It also excites your liver to release glucose into the blood for a quick source of energy. The parasympathetic system does the opposite, slowing down your heart rate and decreasing your blood pressure. This system also activates tranquil functions, such as stimulating the secretion of saliva in your mouth or digestive enzymes into your stomach. The sympathetic and parasympathetic systems vary anatomically too. In this diagram, you can see the nerves exiting just one side of the central nervous system, but you need to know that in reality they exit both sides. You are only seeing one side, so things don't get too complicated to look at. Let's start with the sympathetic division. Notice how all the sympathetic nerves exit from the thoracic and lumbar areas of the spinal cord. Now, the plus and minus signs you see have to do with the kind of activity produced by the neurons. If there's a plus sign, the neurons increase the activity of the organs they are innervating. If there's a minus sign, then the neurons decrease the activity of the organs they are innervating. You can see a chain of ganglia near the spinal cord and 3 ganglia a little farther away from that. They are called autonomic ganglia of the sympathetic division, or sympathetic chains of ganglia. Now remember, there really are 2 chains of ganglia, one on each side of the spinal column. If these chains are so close to the spinal cord then, the neuron that comes before the ganglion will be short, and the postganglionic neuron will be long because it has to travel to the effector organ. Now take a look at the parasympathetic nerves. First, some of them exit from the brain, while others exit from the sacral area of the spinal cord. Remember, the sympathetic nerves exit only from the thoracic and lumbar areas. You can see ganglia in this division too, but notice how the preganglionic neuron stretches much farther from the brain or spinal cord before it synapses with the postganglionic neuron that is near the effector organ. So besides where the nerves exit the spinal cord, another difference between the sympathetic and parasympathetic division is that in the sympathetic division, the preganglionic neurons are short and the postganglionic neurons are long. But in the parasympathetic division, it's the opposite. The preganglionic neurons are long and the postganglionic neurons are short. Another difference is that the preganglionic neurons of the sympathetic division diverge a lot. That enables them to innervate many effectors at one time. The preganglionic neurons of the parasympathetic division don't diverge very much, so they don't affect as many effectors. Now consider the location where the preganglionic neuron cell bodies are in each division. All the cell bodies of the preganglionic neurons in both divisions are found in the central nervous system. But the sympathetic division cell bodies are in the thoracic and lumbar areas of the spinal cord, while the parasympathetic division are in the brainstem and sacral regions. Because of their locations, you can see why the sympathetic nerves are found throughout the body, while the parasympathetic nerves are in your head and trunk areas. Let's now talk about what these 2 divisions of the autonomic nervous system do. Both divisions work without you having to consciously think about them. Some body functions are controlled by both divisions. In those cases, the divisions control opposite effects, such as increasing heart rate and decreasing heart rate. There are other body processes, though, that are controlled just by a single system. Well, let's take a closer look at how they control your heart. The sympathetic division has neurons that send signals to increase heart rate, as well as how strongly your heart contracts. The parasympathetic division also has neurons that innervate the heart, but these send signals that slow heart rate down. Let's say that you are going for a run. Your sympathetic nervous system sends action potentials down its neurons to your heart so that it begins to beat more quickly and heart rate increases. This increases the flow of blood around your body. Then, when you are done running, your parasympathetic division sends action potentials down its neurons to your heart so that the heart rate decreases. So when you're running, you have a high rate of sympathetic activity because many action potentials are moving down the sympathetic neurons to your heart. Of course, when you run, you also need to take in more oxygen, and that means that your lungs need to take in more air. Both divisions of the autonomic nervous system are involved here as well. You see, the lungs are filled with bronchial tubes. When the sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system sends action potentials down the neurons to your lungs, these tubes will dilate, becoming wider in diameter. Well, if they're wider, that means that more air can enter your lungs. When you are done with your run, your body doesn't need to take in as much air. So your parasympathetic division kicks in, sending action potentials to the lungs so that the bronchial tubes constrict, shrinking in diameter and taking in less air. So in these two examples, the sympathetic division excites the heart and lungs, while the parasympathetic division relaxes the heart and lungs. But in the case of the digestive system, these two divisions behave in an opposite manner. The sympathetic system sends action potentials that cause the digestive system to slow down. The organs don't move digested food, digestive juices aren't secreted, and blood flow to these organs is reduced. On the other hand, when the parasympathetic division is active, digestive movement increases and digestive juices increase. Let's say you have to give a speech to a large group of people and you're feeling nervous. What happens? Your heart rate increases and your mouth becomes dry. That's because your sympathetic division of your autonomic nervous system is active, stimulating your heart and causing the secretions of your digestive system, such as saliva, to decrease. Another function both divisions affect is vision. The sympathetic division stimulates the pupil in the eye to dilate, increasing in diameter. This allows more light in. It also relaxes the muscle that controls the lens of the eye so that you can see things far away. The parasympathetic division, on the other hand, causes the pupil to contract, reducing how much light enters the eye. And it contracts the muscle that controls the lens so that you can see things closer to you. These divisions work against one another in the function of urination, too. The sympathetic division relaxes the bladder, and the parasympathetic division contracts it. Well, I've talked about the functions in which these two divisions oppose one another: the heart, bronchial tubes, digestive system, vision, and urination. They also work opposite each other in the reproductive system, but we'll get to the specifics of that in another module. Because these muscles and organs are affected by both divisions, they have to be innervated by both of them. But the heart, eyes, and other areas I just mentioned are located in the head or trunk. That's because the parasympathetic nerves are only found in those two locations. Well, there are lots of areas of the body that are regulated by only one of these two divisions of the autonomic nervous system. That means that the structures are innervated by a single division. A good example of this would be the lacrimal glands in the eyes. These glands are responsible for making tears. Even when you aren't sad, your eyes need to produce tears to keep the eye moist and keep out infectious agents. The excess moisture drains out of a canal near your nose, so there isn't moisture buildup. When you cry, your glands are just making more moisture than can drain away. Well, the lacrimal glands are controlled by only the parasympathetic division. Because the sympathetic division has neurons that go all over the body, there are lots of functions that this division controls that the parasympathetic division does not. For example, it innervates blood vessels all over the body. It stimulates the liver so that it will increase how much glucose is released into the bloodstream for extra energy. In the skin, it causes blood vessels to contract and also causes contraction of the erector pili muscles there. That makes the hair on your skin stand up. The sympathetic division also is a good example of a positive feedback system in the body. Remember that most of the systems of the body are controlled by negative feedback systems in order to relate homeostasis. Usually, if some variable gets too high, negative feedback systems cause functions to begin in order to reduce that variable, and vice versa. But the sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system behaves as a positive feedback system. It stimulates the adrenal glands located on each kidney. This causes them to make and secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine, two hormones in the body. Well, when epinephrine gets into the blood, it causes the liver to release extra glucose into the blood. It also constricts the blood vessels in the abdominal organs so blood can flow more freely to the tissues needing extra oxygen and nutrients. Both epinephrine and norepinephrine in the blood cause your heart rate to increase. Yet these also are all effects that the sympathetic division directly causes. Now you may be wondering why the sympathetic division directly innervates the liver so it can control the release of glucose into the bloodstream. And it innervates the blood vessels in the heart too, so they can increase the blood flow and heart rate. So why does the system cause the adrenal glands to release hormones to do the same thing? I'm in the middle of a paintball game. To avoid being hit by paintballs while being ready to fire at my opponent, my body needs to be prepared for this sudden activity. I have to have an increased heart rate, dilated blood vessels, and breathe faster, right? And I can thank my sympathetic division to stimulate those organs via the neurons that innervate them. But if I keep playing the game for very long, these effects have to continue for a while. Well, when the sympathetic division stimulates that adrenal gland to release the hormones I just talked about, it takes a bit of time for the organs to respond to the hormones. However, the direct innervation fills in until the hormones can do their job. So the innervation of the adrenal glands by the sympathetic division helps to prolong the functions that I need. For example, the sympathetic division directly controls the cardiac muscle, but it prolongs that effect by stimulating the adrenal medulla to release its hormones, increasing heart rate more. This then is a positive feedback system. The body variable, which is heart rate, is increased, and then because of this system creating that increase, it becomes increased again. Now that can't continue forever, or my heart would continue to beat faster and faster, which of course you know isn't good. So the positive feedback system has to be shut down. That's the point when the sympathetic division stops. Yet even when it does stop, the hormones that the adrenal medulla released are still flowing through the blood. So once the sympathetic division turns off, the heart rate is still increased for a few minutes longer, going back to normal once those hormones are metabolized. Therefore, we can say that as a rule, the sympathetic division has to do with functions that increase overall body activity, and it dampens functions that don't have to do with activity, such as digestion, for example. So my body is working overtime, slowing the unnecessary functions while speeding up the needed ones so that I can win this epic battle.